Happy Wednesday, folks. Welcome to Art of the City TV. Today we have an amazing guest coming from Indian country. And as many of you know, this entire month we're devoting to Native American artists. And for those of you who are not aware, I'm actually from one of the tribes here in San Diego. And it's been a tradition for me as an art dealer to go into Santa Fe every year for the biggest event of the year called Indian Market. And this is the very first time since 1922 it's been canceled, along with a lot of things, obviously, due to the coronavirus. And so we felt that it was important to support Native American artists. Many of the artists that you're going to see on the show have reached that critical acclaim where people are going to their website and supporting them, supporting their efforts. But there are many, many artists that this is really what they depend on. This is their livelihood for the entire year. For many artists, it represents between 80 and 90% of their revenue stream for the artwork that they're going to be bringing into, whether it's galleries or private collectors. So I felt like it was a really important thing for us to reach out and support these artists. So the first thing I'd like to ask you to do before we bring this artist on is make sure you share this. So if you're live streaming here, if you can just click the share button there from our page to yours, let's spread the awareness because it's really important for artists and all of us right now, but specifically artists that don't have an outlet right now to show their work. So I appreciate that. What a lot of people aren't aware of is in Indian country, it's very diverse. So we have tribes from coast to coast, all the way up to Canada, all the way down to where I'm live streaming from in San Diego. And this artist is coming from one of the largest populations of tribes, if not the largest, and that's Navajo country. This artist is Jeremy Salazar, and I've known Jeremy now for 4 years. I met him when he was really just getting started as a young artist, and he has really taken the art world by storm. He's one of the hardest working artists I know and just a really incredible giving soul. And so I'm really excited to bring him onto the show. So let's see if we can get him to come live here. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hey, Ruth.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Better than I deserve.
You always have that great upbeat, outlook on life. So I know you just came back because I saw you in my gallery. What was it on Monday? And then you drove back to where you live in, and that's in Albuquerque now. Is that correct?
Yes, currently I'm based in Albuquerque. Been doing a lot of traveling lately, and so that's why I was back in San Diego visiting with you a bit. But yeah, I'm currently in Albuquerque.
That's great. So for those, I know you've got a lot of followers, and I'm one of them. I'm one of your big fans. I'm always watching on your Facebook and Instagram to see what you're creating. But for those who don't know who you are, maybe you can share a little bit, because one of the things that I really enjoyed meeting you for the first time was just hearing the history and hearing, how you. I almost want to say that in a lot of ways, you're probably more of an authentic Native American than I am, because our tribe is a little bit of a city slicker tribe. We're pretty close to the major cities. So we grew up on the reservation and off, but you really, you had an experience of really almost what it was like maybe 50 years ago in reservation life, and maybe share a little bit about your childhood and how you were brought up.
Yeah, so originally I'm from the Navajo Reservation in New Mexico, born and raised there. My father's an artist, and I grew up watching him paint. Although I've never really painted myself, growing up, I was really inspired by the work ethic that he showed out on the reservation. And this part of the reservation is really out in the middle of nowhere. My dad started painting when he was a young kid, and it brings him all the way back when they didn't have any materials to use. So he would use um, ash embers from the coal fire pit, and he would use that to draw on some rocks. And so that kind of led his curiosity, and he kept going to the point where he could finally be able to afford some art supplies, and then he would start painting with some better art supplies. And one thing led to another, to the point where he was able to provide for himself and his family. And so I witnessed this growing up. I saw his work ethic when he had little to few supplies. And so this really inspired me coming from the reservation. Um, Not many people know about it, but many parts on the Navajo reservation, there's no running water, there's no electricity, it's dirt roads out in the middle of nowhere, no street signs, no phone signal, no internet, none of that, no Wi Fi. And so we had to learn how to be adaptable to our environment with what little we had. And so that's sort of my heritage when it comes to why I paint and where I come from.
That's incredible. And where did your father then, after he created the artwork, where was he able to commerce with it and bring it to collectors to actually, support the family through his art?
Yeah, so he would go to Albuquerque, and at the time there was a flea market in the city of Albuquerque every weekend. And so I remember we would go there with our little old truck, and he would have a tarp, and he would lay it out on the pavement there, and all of his art pieces that he made throughout the week, he would display it on the ground. No easel, no fancy lighting, no high dollar booth setting, just a simple little display out on the pavement there. And so over time, he developed some really good personal connections with collectors. And although he was pretty quiet and he wasn't his English wasn't his first language, um, he really got to the point where he made solid connections with certain collectors, and that really brought us up.
That's such a wonderful heritage that you come from, and having that as an example of the willingness to do whatever it takes to take care of your family.
Hmm.
And I see that just with you bringing your wife and your I think you have two children now.
We have two little girls. Hmm.
Okay. I remember the first one, when she came into the gallery, and I always thought it was so great that you made it a family affair. You guys traveled all over. I also was going to ask you, didn't you tell me that you were able to catch wild horses as a
Yeah.
kid?
Yeah, so growing up, I wasn't particularly interested in artwork, although I saw my dad do that. My main passion when I was younger was horses. So, out in the middle of nowhere on the reservation, we would round up all of these wild horses and we would train them. We would train them for endurance races throughout the reservation. And this was sort of my income, along with training wild horses for other people and also training wild horses for white ranchers off the reservation. So that was my income growing up. That's all I cared about. That was my passion. I was excited to do that. So that, and also harvesting firewood and selling it during the winter. So wild horses throughout the summer and firewood throughout the winter. That was my income growing up.
Wow, that's just, to me, like, this is really what people, when they think about Native American people, that's really the stories. Because I mean, it wasn't too far back where my great grandfather had a very similar upbringing. Things changed, and being on the West Coast and being close to San Diego, things shifted pretty quickly. But for you in Navajo country, it's such a large space, and it doesn't it border Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico, right? Those are the main areas where Navajo country exists.
Yes, more so in Arizona, but there is a large section crossing over into New Mexico, and that's where I'm from, the Eastern Agency. And it parts of it goes into Colorado, and then there's a little chunk that goes into Utah.
And do you refer to yourself as Navajo or Dine?
Some circles they're only familiar with Navajo, particularly the Caucasians. But when I say Navajo in front of my brothers, they don't like it, so I have to remind myself to say the name. So it's
Okay,
interchangeable most times. Yeah.
okay. And kind of like we're Luceño, which is a Spanish name, and that's not our original name as a tribe. I would imagine the Navajo came also from the Spaniards, right, from the Inquisition there.
Yeah, we definitely have a history with the Spaniards, um, and so there's some of our words are in Spanish.
Right.
Yeah, and so I think like my last name is Salazar, and that's not an Navajo name; it's a Hispanic name. It's funny, kind of interesting and funny at the same time. But back when my great great grandfather was part of a group of Navajos who were enlisting their names in the census. Of course, back then, many of them were illiterate and they couldn't write or read. And so, oftentimes, the census people would write names for them. And so, when it came time when my great great grandfather was going to put his name down or put a mark next to some already made names, there was a Mexican American soldier standing there, and he told him, "Hold on, let me put my name for you." And so he put Salazar. And so apparently that's the story, and that's how we got the name Salazar.
Okay, that's at least you have that history. I'm Rodriguez, which again is a Spanish name and clearly not, from our tribal people. But I don't really know the history of how that came to be. But it is interesting. I do know that here in California, that there was definitely a bounty on the heads of Native people, and so a lot of the Native folks changed their names to Spanish names in order to kind of, be under the radar, if you will. So that is a very interesting history. And the only reason that I bring it up is because a lot of the folks watching maybe are not familiar with the diversity within Indian country. And even the word Indian country, I've had people say, well, what does that mean? Well, it really means that we have our own country within the United States, that the borders of the reservations, the idea was we'd have our own government and our own system. So that was for better or for worse. And I'm sure that you have some stories about that as well, Jeremy. But how did you end up going back to pretty much your roots, if you will, the way that you were raised, to decide to become an artist?
Yeah, so I did a lot of different things right out of high school, but the main thing that carried me on for a while was welding. And so I got a degree in welding, and that was my source of income for quite some time. It wasn't until I got married with my wife where we figured we'd do something a little different. And so we started traveling. We got married in Arizona. I'm from New Mexico. My wife is originally from Guatemala. She's born and raised there. Her father's Mayan Indian and her mother's Caucasian from California. So having family members in California, we spent some time there in North LA, and then we moved up into Washington State in Spokane. Then we crossed over, hopped the fence into North Idaho, where we lived in Coeur d'Alene for a few years. And that's where we had our first daughter there, little Abigail. Um, so this was 4 years ago. So of course, since then we moved back here to New Mexico in Albuquerque. But when my daughter was born, one thing that I wanted to do was have an occupation that didn't require so much of my time.
Mhm.
In the sense that I wanted to see my daughter grow up and I wanted to be there for her. And so I one day I thought I think I can get into artwork, and of course at the time I had no interest in artwork. I just had a little memories here and there of my dad painting when I was growing up, and so then I thought, all right, let me put away the applications, all of these things that I had on the side that I was thinking about going into. I thought, all right, well, let me buy some cheap art supplies. So I bought some cheap art supplies and I started painting. And my brother, who lived with us at the time, he came into the garage and he saw my first art piece. He started laughing and turned around and walked back out the door. and, and so that was quite embarrassing and disheartening at the same time. Nevertheless, I kept at it. I kept painting. 3 months later, the very first painting that I ever sold was to my brother. He came back, he saw the progress of my artwork, then he thought, wow, I want to buy that. And so he's the first person that ever officially collected my painting. And so since then, it's been a whirlwind. Hmm.
Well, when I first met you, I was really impressed. The first thing that I was impressed by was your color. I mean, besides the subject matter of what you were capturing, you just have a innate sensibility for color. You just know how to bring colors together that normally probably wouldn't work, but you have a way of bringing those colors together. And I am really surprised to hear that it's only been really 4 years that you've been creating art, because it has been a whirlwind. You know, I've seen articles written about you, and you've kind of already started to do some very big jobs in Indian country. I know my tribe commissioned a couple of pieces for you to create. And maybe share a little bit about your passion of how you're going about it and these historical figures that you're bringing to life through your art.
Yeah, so most of my work is based on old historical photographs from the 1800s and early 1900s. Old black and white pictures oftentimes are really grainy and out of focus and hardly any
Right,
detail. And so, yeah, old pictures. And so, uh, at the same time, I didn't really like the notion of people having stereotypical perspectives of Native people. Oftentimes, I feel like we're forgotten and neglected, and really not even thought about. If we are remembered, it's the old savages way back when, and
right,
they're not here. They're not contemporary, and so I wanted to really bring back the history of our culture as Native people in a way that was undeniable. And so I felt like instead of taking the traditional oil painting route and painting the Indian on horseback in that traditional romantic scene, I felt like I
right.
needed to do a new approach, a bolder approach, a colorful approach, and something very big. And so most of my paintings are really large in size, 6 feet, 7 feet, 8 feet, and they're all contemporary with just splashes of color, vibrant and very in your face type of deal. And this style, coupled with the fact that the images are from old photographs, kind of has a new dimension in representing who we are as Native people. And so I feel like my work really stands on its own in the sense that it shows people who are watching and looking at the artwork like we are here, we're contemporary, we can compete, we're equal, and we're not forgotten and we're not in the past.
Yes, we're still here, right?
Yeah, for
And
sure.
that's, I mean, yeah, I mean, it makes an incredible statement. Do you have a couple of pieces that we could look at so the viewers can see it? And I'm going to reduce my screen so we'll get a little bit better look at what you have there.
Okay. Yeah, so this is my little room studio at the moment. Although I focus predominantly on Native American portraits, I do wildlife as well. So this piece is of a bison here, and it kind of gives an example of the color palette that I use. This piece is a 48 by
Gorgeous.
60. Here's another one that I'm currently working on. I think this is a good example of the type of work that I do. I generally like to make the face a little more realistic, using color palettes that resemble true flesh tones, and the rest kind of just abstracts into color. Another piece here, if you can see,
Yes.
is sort of a new style that I started where I'm incorporating figures and more of a loose abstract, but with the face, of course, a little more realistic, and then having titles um, within the painting itself. So there's that piece, and here's one more that I
Yeah, it
showed you.
brings in, I like the titles in the back. It almost is bringing in a little bit of a pop sensibility into your work.
Yeah, exactly, and that's a part of the reason why I added the titles on the backside of the images here. Yeah,
Those are
so
gorgeous,
thank
beautiful works. I'll bring myself back up here. So let's talk about Indian Market. You have been at Indian Market now for 2 years or 3 years?
Actually, last year was my first year
It
participating.
was, okay.
Yeah. Last year was a success. I nearly sold out. I think I had like two paintings left. Same story with my father because we both shared the booth there. And so we were really excited for this year with the success we had last year. And of course, with the pandemic, that was impossible to showcase our work in person. Um, and so, yeah, our experience so far, I'm not too sure yet. It appears that we haven't gotten much activity on our website. And I think the whole outline that they did for Swaya currently is to have people look through the menu of artists, so to speak. And I think there was over 450 artists participating. And so there's a lot of artists to shuffle through and look through. And so yeah.
Yeah, I think that, this is the first year that Swaya has ever had to do a online platform. And I think it's been a challenge because when you're used to putting on a festival and it's tangible, people come in. I remember seeing you last year. I was so excited to run into you and see, how many people. Your booth was just so packed the entire time, which I was really happy to see. But it's kind of not the same. And I think with art, having that ability to meet somebody like yourself, to talk to about what you're creating and your inspiration, it's tough to replicate that on a digital platform. So hopefully, they'll massage it, it will get better. And, even something like our live stream, having something like that on there where people can hear you talking about your art, I think that's a really important thing.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, all new endeavors start pretty slow, and so
That's right.
we weren't anticipating a huge turnout online. But yeah, my main concern was for the other artists that aren't necessarily tech savvy, and most of them do rely on the personal presentation of their artwork and meeting collectors in person. My wife and I were somewhat concerned for many of our friends that we know that are in that situation. Thankfully,
Especially the older generation, which,
yes,
Sawaya has, this is a juried show, folks, so it's not easy to get into. First of all, you have to be a card holding from a actual reservation. You have to show that you are legitimate. And then there's a lot of hurdles because there's so many people who want into this show that sometimes you can wait, 4 or 5 years before you get juried into this show. So a lot of the folks that are in the show have been in for many, many years, and they happen to be quite a bit older, and they don't have that background in technology like Jeremy's talking about. So you're right about that.
yeah. Hopefully, we can create better ways in which we can help represent the older people's work, because they're really the ones that laid down the pattern and the foundation for the new artists such as myself. I do have an advantage in that I'm more capable to do things on my own online and through social media. And thankfully, we weren't totally dependent on the sales that we would have generated if Swaya had continued in person. Um, and that's one of the blessings for sure.
Well, you've never been one to let grass grow under your feet. I know that, your hustle is strong. You go to all the powwows, you've been promoting your work and really just getting the awareness out about your artwork. And I know it's resulted in quite a few commissions with tribes. Can you share a little bit about the different tribes, that maybe a couple that you've worked with and the things that you've created for the folks there?
Yeah, so when I was fresh and brand new, the natural avenue that we took to start showcasing my artwork was through powwows. So we would just to every powwow that we can think of, and I would showcase my work. And slowly but surely, we develop a steady collector base to the point where It gave me more freedom and more free time to start focusing on larger, specific works that I wanted to do. And so that led us to working with tribes. I finally got to the point where I felt comfortable enough to really be proud of my larger pieces. And so I contacted some tribes, or actually the first tribe, the Coeur d'Alene tribe in North Idaho, where we lived at the time. Um, they asked me if I could do some commission pieces based on their historical photographs for the tribe. And of course, I jumped on the opportunity. And so that one painting turned into close to a dozen pieces, I think, that the tribe now owns. And on top of that, I've been privileged to have reproductions made, and it's all in their resort and their hotel rooms. And so that
Oh,
was that was
great.
sort of a really milestone for us, especially for me and my confidence in my artwork. And ever since then, this was like 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, and things just happen so rapidly every year. We managed to work with, I think, close to a dozen tribes now.
Oh,
Currently,
great.
yeah, currently I'm working with a tribe in just east of Calgary in Canada, and so yeah, so working with them and plans to work with more tribes in the future.
So you're taking their historical photos of important leaders within the tribe, and then you're turning them into these amazing life-size, colorful works that, I mean, you can't stop. You can't help but notice. I mean, everybody I know at our tribe stops. That's the first thing they see is the basket woman that you created and the Lucenio man with the rabbit stick. So I know exactly the response just from our own tribe. So just incredible work. And you're also very much involved in giving back. I know that's something that you've taken your own resources, and both you and your wife have put together food and baskets to help you know moms maybe and families that are in need. Maybe share a little bit about that.
Yeah, it always comes back to my father. I think my father and my mother are definitely heroes of mine. I can remember when I was younger, we would help out the young people in our community, um, the sort of like the at risk teens. And we would bring them along. We would go get some firewood, or when we're training horses, or when we're going um, and herding cattle, and all of these different activities. We would always bring along the young people. And so I kind of grew up with that example. And now it got to the point where our artwork really provides opportunities for us to help out our community in a bigger and more extensive way. So there's basically three things that we like to do on all reservations, but particularly the Navajo reservation, since we live close by now, is to help the single mothers, is to help the elders, and to provide short-term economic opportunities for the unemployed. And so these are three areas that we really highlight in our outreach.
I love that. And, with that said, I have the piece that you dropped off at my gallery. Folks, you can see this. I don't know if you can see it there. So one of the things that we've been doing for many years, and Jeremy actually brought this piece. You're just so great, Jeremy, because he knew we were having a tough time being closed down for, 3 months with my gallery. But we also, as a company, like Jeremy, and I think like a lot of the native tribes, one of the things in our culture is that need to give back and to support, whoever is in need. That's really part of, I think, the native culture across the land, no matter where you go. But we support an orphanage in Uganda that is made up of primarily kids that have lost their parents due to AIDS. And now they're getting a tremendous amount of young babies from the COVID crisis over there in Uganda. So we're going to be auctioning this piece that Jeremy was so gracious to give us, and we'll be putting those proceeds towards a whole nother country, a whole nother group of people. So thank you, Jeremy, for that. I
Yeah,
really
you're welcome.
appreciate it. Did I lose you? Let me
Oh,
see. Oh, you're still here?
you're,
Okay, good.
yeah.
So Jeremy, where can people find your work? I put up here, hopefully it's right, 3feathers.com. And then what are your handles on Facebook and Instagram?
Yeah, so people can find my work primarily on social media. So if people look up Three Feather Studios, so the word Three Feather Studios, both on Instagram and Facebook, they can see my work there. And also on my website, 3featherstudios.com.
And then once the COVID clears, are you going to hit the road again?
Fortunately, we're in a position where we get to take new endeavors in our business, and so I think I'll be going lesser and lesser to the powwows. Although I think I will continue to revisit every now and then to remember my how I got to my point. But yeah, we're going to be excited to start new things with our business.
That's great. I love it. And I love the fact that it's a family business. And maybe at some point, Jeremy's going to have his own gallery. You never know. You never
Yeah.
know how spirit is going to work, right?
Yes, yes, for sure.
So that could be exciting. One last question. What are your thoughts on if you have a young person coming along wanting to be a professional artist like you've been? What would be the advice that you would give? Let's say a
Yes.
young Native person
Yeah.
specifically.
Yeah, I came across this quote that was pretty inspiring to me. It was, "The dream is free, but the hustle is sold separately." I think this country, despite all of its problems and shortcomings, is still one of the best countries to live in the world. And so many opportunities are there for the taking. It all takes a matter of grit and passion and um, a sense of purpose in that everything you create is was preordained to bless somebody, and so having the right perspectives and not giving up. Of course, these sound cliche. You know we all heard that growing up, not to give up, but it's cliche for a reason. And I think me not giving up and just focusing and just working hard really solidified a work ethic to the point where the work speaks for itself. And so that's what I would say to the younger people. Work to the point where for work to the point where your paintings or your artwork speaks for itself, and then it'll carry on its own language from that point on.
Well said. I love that.
Mm.
Well, thank you so much, Jeremy. I can't wait to see you. And as soon as this clears, we'll talk about having you out to my gallery and doing a show, hopefully sooner than later. But until then, keep doing what you're doing. It's blessing a lot of people. And I know that the tribe specifically, just taking those old photos, which a lot of times those photos were taken, with in some pretty dark times where
Mhm.
people were it was a very hard time, let's just put it that way. And you're taking those photos and you're giving honor to our ancestors, you're bringing them to life. And it's giving the generation that the young people now, they walk into a tribal hall or they walk into a government center or casino or wherever they walk into, and they get to see their ancestors in full color, full life with this optimism that we are pushing forward to the youngsters here in Indian country. So I appreciate you putting that into a visual context. And that's the power of art, and that's the power of what you're bringing to the world through your art. So thank you for that.
Thank you very much, Ruth. I appreciate all the times when you helped us out along the way.
Well, we're all in this together, right? And I think for us, we're kindred spirits in the art world because we believe that art is powerful and it's essential. It's a needed part of who we are as human beings on this planet. So thank you for providing your talent to the world.
No, thank you.
Okay, blessings to your family, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon.
Sounds good. All right,
Okay,
Ruth. Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye.
This is why I do what I do for a really long time, is this passion I have for these artists and being able to have this platform, Art of the City. bringing people onto the show, to me, is my contribution to the world of art, and to be able to show how much work goes into this. I mean, this guy, since I first met him, he has worked his tail off, and not only in the studio, but taking his work from powwow to powwow and spreading the awareness. It's not an easy road for most of these artists. And when they get to that place where their work is in demand, it's kind of the icing on the cake, but it's also something that has to be maintained. So I appreciate you folks sharing the word, sharing this platform, Art of the City, but also go to Jeremy's website, support him if you can. He has some beautiful prints there as well. So not everything is original, and so it's very affordable. And then also just, if you can't do that, just share his platform with other people so we spread the word. We have some exciting things coming up. So George Rivera will be on the show on Friday, so you don't want to miss that, 4 p.m. And then on Monday, one of my favorite jewelry artists, Cody Sanderson. I'm very excited to have him on the show. And then a lot of other creatives coming. So if you get a chance, go to our YouTube page. It's Art of the City TV, and go ahead and subscribe to that, because if you miss a show, you can go back, you can watch these shows. We put them up there so that people who miss out can go and see what we're doing here. So have a great day, folks. It's Wednesday. I hope that you were blessed by this young artist, and I hope that you continue to go out there and look for the good in the world. We're in some very trying times. I know a lot of people have been emailing me, just talking about how much they appreciate this platform, that it's giving them inspiration and giving them hope. And that's really what art is all about. So take that forward, spread it throughout the world. The world needs creatives. The world needs love and hope. And you watching, this is up to you now, so you can go spread this. And I will see you on Friday, 4 p.m., live streaming here from San Diego, Art of the City. Be blessed, folks. Enjoy the day.